Hi everyone, Stuart here. Welcome to my kitchen. I don't know whether you spotted one of my recent posts, maybe of a couple of weeks ago, where I talked about creating a hawthorn berry sauce. It's called a haw sauce, and I'm going to create it using some of my honey. So it will be a honey haw sauce. It's quite a spicy sauce, and we use the berries from the hawthorn, go out and pick them around this time of the year, sometimes a little bit earlier, and make sure we get them before the birds have them all, and bring them back and make a really nice spicy sauce that we can then give away as presents, use ourselves. It goes really well on roasted vegetables and things like that. If you're a meat eater, then try it with a burger, that kind of thing. On some bacon. Being a vegetarian, that's not something that I would do, but it goes great with vegetable kebabs and that kind of thing, so it's well worth giving it a try. The recipe comes from a book that I purchased quite a few years ago. It's called Preserves by a lady by the name of Pam Corbin, and it's part of the River Cottage Handbook series, and it's a really great book. That's the recipe, but it's got lots of different kind of old style recipes in it, stuff that really people, I guess, can't be bothered to make these days. They do take a bit of effort. Roasted tomato ketchup happens to be one of my favourites, but the saucy haw ketchup is one that, instead of using sugar, I use some sugar but also some of my own honey, and I thought it would be quite good to show you how we make that, and maybe give you enough time to make a couple of bottles yourself to perhaps give away as either a Christmas gift, or if you're in the States, maybe Thanksgiving, and let other people enjoy some of the fruits of your labour. So let's have a look at the ingredients that we've got, and starting of course with the berries from the hawthorn. So here are the ingredients. We've got in the top corner here are hawthorn berries. I picked these a while back, so these are now out of the freezer. I didn't want to just leave them out in the open just to go mouldy, so we popped them into the freezer. I'm making 4 batches, and I'll post the recipe so that you've got the exact recipe, but you need 500 grams of haw berries. And then we've got equal quantities of sugar and honey. And the honey is actually one of the stronger honeys that we produce. It's ivy honey, and this has just come out of the bottom of one of the buckets. It's what was left over. I would normally use it for myself and not sell it, but we're popping this one into the recipe. Then we've got some cracked black pepper, some salt, and I like to add a bit of heat, so this is crushed chili flakes. And then finally we've got cider vinegar, and as I say, I'll pop the exact recipe down so that you can make up just one batch, and I think it makes about 300 mils of sauce, so it doesn't make a huge amount, but it's well worth making. So what we've got here are the haw berries, which I've just rinsed, and that's cleaned off a lot of dirt, and it allows you to remove some of the leaves. The recipe does say remove the stalks from the berries, but to be honest, I just don't have the patience to sit and remove all of these little stalks, and they've never really caused me any problems before. Something I have discovered that is a benefit of washing them after freezing, and I think freezing has made a dramatic difference. The skins feel a little bit softer, but also, and I'll just take the camera off the tripod, the other thing that I've found is that having washed them, I don't know whether you can see this, but the berries seem to have had a lot of insects laying their eggs, and these are the larvae or the maggots that have crawled out of the berries and would have gone into the sauce. I don't suppose those larvae, those maggots, would have made a great deal of difference, but being vegetarian, it's always nice to remove any meat from your meal. Don't tell my wife, hopefully she won't spot that. What I have also done is I've just heated up the honey. It was fairly solid, so I've just popped it in the microwave just to make it easier to manage really and pourable. And all we have to do is to just pop everything into the pan. So the first thing we do is to pop in the haw-berries. Try and get them all in. The next thing we want is the cider vinegar, and this would normally be 300 millilitres of white wine or cider vinegar, but because we're making 4 lots of the recipe, there's going to be quite a bit of cider vinegar going in. The next thing we want is to add some water, and that's an equal quantity of water to the cider vinegar. And that's it for now. So we're going to simmer this until the hawthorn berries start to split and soften, and then we're going to pass this through a sieve to get all of the flavour from the berries. So they've been simmering for about 25 minutes now, and you can see that they're starting to change colour. They've lost that dark red colour and they've started to mash down a little bit, and they're about ready now to be sieved. But what I like to do beforehand is to just take a potato masher and just mash all of the berries, just to break them up a little bit, and that makes the sieving process a lot easier. It just helps to break down the berries a little bit more before you put them through the sieve, because that's probably the most time consuming bit, the actual sieving of all of the berries. They're not all going to break down, but it's just useful to be able to mash them up a little bit and sieve them prior to forcing them through the sieve with the wooden spoon. Okay, so the next job is to sieve all of the stones and skin out of the sauce, and you'll be left with the liquor. And as I say, this is the most time consuming bit for me, so I'm just trying to take as much of the liquid off first before I then get down to the berries. And then I use the wooden spoon just to rub them through, and you can see the liquid coming through, and that's the base colour of the sauce. That's what the sauce is going to look like, and you can see it's quite a nice dark red colour. So I'm going to continue mashing these, and it is just a case of pressing them through, and you can see I've got quite a lot to do, so this is going to take a while. So I'm just going to keep doing this and come back to you once I've got to the last little bit. So we're almost done. This is one of the last couple of scoopfuls that we need to just press through the sieve, and then we can get on to the next stage. There are still quite a few maggots in here that didn't come out from the freezing process, but I guess a little bit of extra protein isn't going to do me any harm. So yeah, we'll catch up again once I've just finished pressing all of this through. And what we're after is all of the liquid that comes off the bottom of the sieve, and that's all the goodness that comes through from pressing the haw-berries through the sieve and squishing them down. So this is the strained haw sauce, and we're just going to pour it back into the cleaned saucepan. I've just washed that out, and that's all the goodness. There were one or two berries managed to slip through, so I'll just hold those back. And that's the base of our sauce. And so now we return this to the heat, and we're going to add our other ingredients. So we've got the sugar, our delicious honey, and that's going to impart a really nice flavour. And as I said, this is basically what was left in the bottom of the bucket, which I wouldn't normally sell. I normally keep it for myself. Lots of goodness in there. And then we've got the cracked black pepper, the chili flakes, and then the sugar. And what I'm going to do is put about half of this sugar in, and then I'll taste it once we've boiled it down a little bit, and we're going to reduce it to just thicken up the sauce. And so once we've done that, I'll give it a taste, and then we can see whether it needs any additional sugar. Better to leave some out than to put too much in. We can always add a little bit more. So we'll bring that up to a gentle simmer, and we'll catch up again soon. So the recipe says to actually boil it for 5 minutes. So this has now been boiling vigorously for about 5 minutes, and I think if you were to leave it a bit longer it would thicken the sauce, but the sauce does thicken a little bit when it cools, once it's in the jars or bottles, whatever you decide to put it into. So the next job really is to just turn the heat down and just give this a taste and see whether it needs any more salt. Okay, so let's give it a try. It's quite fiery, maybe too many chili flakes, but I quite like that. You can really taste the honey in it, so that's really good. And I think probably it does need a little bit more salt, so I'm just going to add the rest of that salt. So that tastes really quite good. I can still feel the heat of the chilies on my tongue. So what I've now got to do is to just let that cool a little. I've got some little milk bottles, which I'll show you in a second, which I've washed, and they're in the oven sterilising at the moment. And you can find different ways of sterilising bottles and jars, but I just picked these up locally. I don't need too many, so we didn't have to buy hundreds of them, and they'll then go into the jar, pop the lid on, and we can then let them cool before we label them and put them into our hampers, which we're going to be giving to our friends for Christmas presents this year. So these are the little bottles. They've been in the oven, and they're now sterilised, and they take about 250 mils of the sauce. So we're just going to carefully pour it in and bring it right to the top. And then we'll pop the caps on while it's still hot. And here we've got 7 lovely bottles of our spicy horse sauce. There's still enough in the pan to do a couple more bottles, so I'm going to just wash a couple more bottles and get those sterilised, and then we can get these labelled with our own little tags, and they'll be ready for Christmas gifts. Well, I hope you give that a try yourselves. Pop out, pick up some haw-berries and make a spicy honey haw sauce. It will thicken slightly in the bottle, but if you wanted to make it into a thicker sauce, then I think if you boiled it for longer or added more sugar, then that would turn it into more of a syrupy ketchup consistency. But as a dipping sauce, I think this is going to be fantastic. Thanks again to you all for your support over the previous months and weeks, and I really appreciate all the comments that you're leaving, and I'm going to crack on now with doing the washing up, and we'll catch up next time. Thanks for watching.